And we have to use all of our collective experience to figure out how we're going to lasso these people, to stop it and to see if we can do damage control, considering that maybe millions of people, 100 million plus people have been vaxxed with this. And that goes through all segments of our society, people losing their jobs, good men and women, whether it's the military or law enforcement or others are losing their livelihood.
Mike, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I think we're all on board that there's a problem and that the vaccine is poison and all of that stuff. So I think we're all in agreement there.
Okay. Okay.
So if I could just kind of to keep us on track so we can just keep moving forward. I want to lay out three things that I came up with, and Ray brought one up before the meeting pretty much even started. And I have a feeling you all agree with this, but I think this is a good outline to go forward with. Number one is that there are a lot of people out there that don't know about all of what's going on in the court system and with the vaccine and all of that. And so I think one of our principal, if we're going to move forward as a group, if that's what becomes of this, is that we have to have education. And you can go to YouTube all day long and watch videos of people like us talking about this stuff and rambling on for hours, and very little gets spoken about what's actually, what are viable possibilities of solutions and things that can be done. And there's so much distortion and lies in a lot of the videos that it's, look at all of us. It's taken us decades to unravel things and we're not even, I mean, we still can't come up with what's actually going on there. So I think that's one very important part of it is education. But that education also needs to be in the history of the law of what it is that the direction that we're trying to go, right? So if we're going to say that we're going to try to institute, or we're going to institute assemblies or a common law jury or a common law courts, then I feel it's absolutely necessary that so people that come to us don't say, oh, this is just another patriot movement with these people pulling the shit out of their ass. Where are they getting all of this? We have that laid out right there. And anyone can go and research it and see for themselves that what historically was intended to be established, if you will, by the Constitution and by the common law. The third thing that I think is important is that we also have a resource that demonstrates the failure of the current system. Like, because we can talk all day long about the problems that are here, but I'll use my case for an example. If you go online to my website, you can see all of the procedural history, everything that I did through every court, every complaint that I made to every law enforcement agency, every legislature, and nothing has been done. I don't know what would speak more volumes for anyone than that. That is someone that's willing to listen and see that it just doesn't work. So I think we need those three things. Would anybody like to chime in?
I would. This is David.
Okay.
I will concur with what you've said and only answer your question of what more can be said about that than what you've got posted. And the answer to that is all the stuff that I've got posted and all the stuff that Charles has been hosting on his website of all of my court cases. And as it goes from one level to the next level, as it goes from the state level to the federal level. I've got a whole slew of them for 17 years on and off. So we've got plenty to manage that one section of what you were talking about. We've got the case history.
Okay, great. And I know from speaking with Charles, and I know with what Bill has done, that there's a lot of documentation out there about the history of common law and how all of that is going to work. I'm just feeling in this moment, having not explored all of it, but just my beginning perception is that it needs to be organized in better organized. And we need to all be on the same page of that, if that's where we're going to go. and know and understand that history, and yeah, have it in a format that is readily and easily available for anyone who's open to this to receive it in the most clear and direct way, without a bunch of jibber jabber, you might say. So yeah, does anyone else have anything to share on that? Yeah, Mike.
As I said, equal protection of the law and due process of the law is the law of the land. When they're not treating with that, they're applying what's called the Trading with the Enemies Act against you, which they took from the 1917 law, brought into 1933, and then removed the exemption against Americans. Okay, I'm not an enemy, you're not an enemy, but you're treating as an enemy combatant when you go into that court, okay, which is in violation of what their job is supposed to be, is to protect your rights. Okay, you shouldn't have to scale the Great China Wall to get to your rights. Okay, and when it comes to your rights, okay, I have a right not to be inoculated with something that's going to take my life. Okay, and that's where we're at right now, is that what moral, decent human being would want to stick that in their children, stick that in themselves, and stick that in their neighbor? Nobody, no moral human being would want to do that once they know what that's about. These people are not operating in a sane fashion. They're operating in a way that's genocidal, and it has to be stopped. Whether it's with the jab, or whether it's with your house being stolen from you, or your children being stolen from you, there's no proper rule of law, proper protection and due process and equal protection of the law. Okay, this is a wide scale. It's not one here, one there. You could go to every state and find those problems. It's consistent across the whole United States. Why? I've seen it happen in many states across the United States. It's very consistent the way that they act. Okay, that has to stop. Okay, why? Because we're now facing the real possibility of a war in our soil, and not just a vaccination war, but a real war. And if we don't get it together now, we don't stand a chance. Okay, because we're going to be done for. We gotta pull it back. We gotta pull the reins, and we can't expect them to do it because they're part of the criminal class of 1913 that hijacked and did the original coup d'etat in our country. A coup d'etat happened, and it was a slow moving coup because it was a financial coup first, and then it became a coup to protect all the infrastructure that they stuck in there over the last 80, 90 years. And when you went in for law enforcement, you didn't sign on for that shit. Okay, that the UN was going to manipulate things from the globals were going to manipulate things from.
Mike, can I interrupt you again? I just want to keep on track about moving forward. We're all in agreement that there's a problem, and we know that it's very interconnected and interwoven, and there's lots of things going on. Okay, so I want to
suggest how we could solve the problem.
Yeah, Georgette, I'd like to ask you if you have anything to share at this point. Matter of fact, I want to ask you if you could to ground us a little bit in the way of, it's very easy to fearmonger and to come to the conclusion with our minds that the end of the world is upon us, and we have to do something now and stop this. Otherwise, the sky is going to fall. And, the sky's been falling for centuries. So maybe if you could share a few words about that, and just, ground us.
Well, I'll speak some words that are intended for grounding, and whether each of you gets grounded in these words or in your true selves, that's up to you. So, there's been some of us speaking about waking up, and I think there are lots of different things to wake up to, and the court system is one of them. Waking up to the deception and lies and debauchery that's going on in the court system. For me, the most important thing to wake up to is what I am. And I do not experience war. Even in the years of going through foreclosure and being in court, yeah, I've had my moments, and talk about anxiety. Dave, I relate. Every time I've ever been in court, my entire body shook like a leaf. So much so that my voice was like this and I couldn't stop shaking, and I would hold a paper and the paper would shake. So, you know, I'd like to just share that where I come from in looking at all of this is I do my very best not to see. Somebody said about, you know, I'm not the enemy. Well, if you keep referring to war, then there has to be an enemy. And if I'm not the enemy, then they are. So whenever there's an enemy, there's going to be suffering and pain and horror. I'd like to just focus on what is it that I want to do right now to end my own pain and suffering, number one, and let that serve to end the pain and suffering of everyone else, whether it's connected to the court system, whether it's connected to any kind of physical pain and suffering. It doesn't matter what the pain and suffering is related to. I want to get out of this mindset of war. That doesn't work. We've seen it. It doesn't work. The us and them and trying to get them and them trying to get us, that doesn't work. So what can I say other than, you know, let's focus on what's going to give me peace right now related to everything in my life. You know, let's stay tuned to this peace that's always here. There is peace always here, but we give our focus to the war, we won't know peace. So I guess that's really all I need to say right now. Yeah, peace.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Let's be peaceful.
I feel you on all of that, and I second that. And I feel it's very important that we all, well, I feel that we're all here for that same reason, but that it's often very, well, maybe to put it in a different context, part of where we get mixed up and have gotten mixed up is, like Georgette was saying, is to continue the war of us against them. And stopping that battle within us doesn't mean that we don't allow ourselves not to be abused. It doesn't mean that we don't move forward with any of our court cases, or it doesn't mean that we don't have these meetings. But yeah,
it's much easier to see clearly what there is to do from a space of peace rather than a space of upset and war. In my experience, much easier to see the next step, the road to getting what we want from a space of peace rather than upset.
Yeah, Charles.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Georgette. My studies of common law, the smaller communities, the reason they're formed in smaller numbers of 10s and 12s is because that smaller number of communities allows for consensus building, so that everybody is on the same page. And I like to believe that we're all on the same page, but Georgette has raised an important issue. that might be summarized in the philosophy of, quote, pacifism. And I want to clarify, Georgette, your words seem to be bordering on a pacifist philosophy that is basically not allowing for us to defend ourselves. Thank you. Thank you. Could you comment on that briefly?
Yeah, it's what I just said, is that when I can bring myself to the peace that I already am, it's much easier to see what it is I need to do so that there, if there's abuse going on, that I can end that abuse.
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Very good. Because we need to have the capacity of self-defense at our grassroots, local community level. Yes, thank you. Because that would have been.
What do you mean by self-defense? Do you mean carrying guns?
I mean,
things like that?
When unlawful peace officers are bashing our face against the pavement, we need to be able to pull out a knife or a gun or something and shoot them. Okay. It's getting down to in times past, and I don't like to talk in these ugly terms, but there are serious, nasty criminals in positions of power all across this Roman-modeled slave trader jurisdiction of government that permeates from the federal level to the state level to our local counties and cities. And thankfully there are good police officers, executive officers like Adam and David here, but there's a lot of them. I know Adam and David will agree with this, that they don't care. They enjoy cracking skulls. They enjoy the macho testosterone assertion of power over people that are not technically in our court system here allowed the access to reasonable self-defense against unlawful governmental official actions. And so it sounds like we've got a consensus, and we can go ahead and move forward with the presumption that we're all on the same page here, and we can go on and discuss more related issues. But I just wanted to clarify that, Georgette, because it did kind of sound like you might be in that pacifist camp, and that would have been a problem for our local right of our town constable peace officers to defend us against the evil empire authoritarianism that Michael so correctly is belaboring the point of, that these vaccine mandates, those are serious, nasty engineered concoctions, and we need to be confronting that. And that's one of, maybe we can discuss it a little bit in the future here, but I've already done a common law court thing. I yield. Go ahead, Adam.
Charles, really quick. Georgette is not advocating being in denial of the problem and being a pacifist. If I could give an example of what you just shared, the difference between a peace officer who is grounded and balanced in peace and himself would not commit violence upon someone else. But the person that's at war with themselves may behave like that, because they don't know how to be with themselves, how to process their emotion, how to not be in conflict with themselves. And so to give you a more realistic example of what Georgette is talking about, that's it. She's talking about being grounded in ourselves first and not at war, and projecting the war outside of ourselves so that we can be at peace and then bring this solution to others. But if we are all sitting here saying we need to go at war, we need to kill all these mad, evil people, and their souls need to rot in hell, that there's nothing going to happen. It's just going to continue.
Real quick, I got to bow out. I've got another appointment.
Okay, Dave.
So
thank
nice
you for being here.
And I look forward to speaking again in the future.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Okay. Now, I don't know why it diverted to that when I was talking about this, but I'm not at war with anybody. I expect that the institutions that we pay taxes for to run honest and faithful to their oaths, to the rule of law that was put in there for our protection and theirs, Okay, look, everybody that's a police officer, he's protected by that Constitution. Everybody that's military is protected by that Constitution also. Okay, that there's going to be a standard of rules, and it's not going to be one rules for one person and a different set of rules for another because they're operating in the executive or judicial or legislative. They're under the same rules. Okay, and that same rules means that they're going to faithfully execute that oath that they've taken, the fidelity of honesty of service, public, not dishonest services fraud. Okay, we've been all abused by dishonest services fraud. Even the cops on the beat, they're being abused by dishonest services fraud because the people who are giving them orders, let's say carrying out a warrant that's defective, okay, not standing up to the 7 points of jurisdiction that they're supposed to be grounded on. So these guys can do their oaths, to carry out their oaths properly. Okay, we have systematic failure all over the place. And can we repair it? Maybe, but maybe it's going to form an outside common law jurisdiction to repair it. Because the longer that thing goes on, the more dangerous it gets for our society as a whole. And the vaccines are just a result of that system being allowed to stay in place to systematically eat like a metastasizing cancer onto our society. We have the right of self-defense. We have the right to remove these people for bad behavior under the Declaration of Independence that says we have a right to alter, amend, or abolish that. Okay, that metastasizing cancer has to be dealt with and has to be dealt with soon because it puts us in incredible jeopardy. Our borders are porous. Terrorists are pouring across our borders. People who, you go to other countries and what you realize about wars and stuff like that, they don't care what your politics or what you think. They just shoot you. Okay. When communists take a country over, what is the first thing they do? They purge millions of people. They did when China, when Mao Zedong took over, when Stalin took over, when Pol Pot took over, they made killing fields of the countries that they took over. Okay, we're in danger of that happening right now. I'm blowing the whistle on it. Sorry, it's truthful. When I was in the military, I helped protect against ballistic missile defense. And I had to write the shortest blurb to the admiral, to the general. This is our situation. We have to deal with this right now. Okay, well, I'm telling you, this is the situation we have. We've got to deal with it now, not later, not kick the can down the road, not try to educate a bunch of stupid, apathetic people who don't realize that the common is inborn. Okay, we got to deal with it now. And that is, this thing is a crime against humanity, needs to be stopped right now. And we need to do it as efficiently as possible and with as much kindness as possible, because there's a lot of people who are going to be in emotional distress when they realize they've been inoculated with something that's going to shorten their life drastically. Okay, and we got to get them the help that we can get out of our society right now, because they're going to face a horrible time the next year or two. So that's my prayer, and I find my peace in Jesus Christ, guys.
Michael, may I, Adam, briefly? I think, Adam, this would be a really great segue for Bill to maybe assume a little bit more of the discussion and explain his current research on the issue related to what Michael was talking about the Supreme Court decision on the vaccine there. Does that sound like a good segue?
I think that's brilliant. Yes, I was just thinking that myself. Please, Bill.
Yeah, sounds good to me too. Is what just happened here. I'm still sitting here stunned. As I had to read that opinion, and it's a concurring opinion. I get it, and three of them did it. Gorsuch actually voted, supported by Alito and Thomas. But we have five on our side, maybe six if Roberts is in the mix. This is the first time, in my view, and I've been doing this 40 years next month, that this court has sounded anything remotely like an Article 3 judicial court that it's supposed to be. And I said in my videos late 2020 that I saw things coming because Alito and Thomas cited a case called Cohen's v. Virginia, 6 Wheaton U.S. 264, 1817. And you can't cite that case without knowing what it means. Best decision court has ever made. And the deal was that they refused to file documents from the state of Texas one in the case against California, and the others with multiple states that wanted to challenge the quote unquote presidential election, which doesn't exist. And the court refused to file them. Well, wait a minute, Article 3, Section 2. What does it say there? In all cases, ALL, in which a state shall be a party, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. How is this possible? Is the court amending Article 3, Section 3, a power that I thought was exclusively vested in Article 5? Or more to the point, and the crown jewel of everything I do, is there are no states, and there haven't been any since very arguably July 28, 1868, when the 14th Amendment was officially acknowledged as existing. That's the problem we have. And that's what we have to get around. And these justices to recognize what they did. And the cases they cited, McCulloch v. Maryland, several times, that's another one of those vintage cases several people will know about, corporations and taxes and things. The important one was ALA Schechter Poultry, 295 US 495, known colloquially at the time as the sick chicken case. And they reversed the judgment against Schechter because whatever had happened with during the course of their, selling their product, it happened after they received it where they were working. And the court correctly ruled 9-0. That followed the rule of interstate commerce set down by E.C. Knight v. United States, 156 US 1. And that set off, in my view, that's the cheap thing that set off FDR and the court packing plan then, because they wanted to especially make use of interstate commerce powers to start a massive takeover by the federal government, which in effect has happened in the last 90 years. If that's the message the court is sending, that they're now ready to do their sworn duty to say what the law is, Marbury versus Madison, we have an unprecedented window of opportunity here, even if we have to start out in their corrupt courts. And there are options here. I like the concept, the local courts that's been talked about here and this and that. And if we can make that work, and I think we can, that would be a good way to do it. In California, we have the California District Court from the original Constitution of 1849, which the Secretary of State here says hasn't been repealed. The county clerk is the ex officio clerk of that court. I'll be going down there before this week, and week is over, with documents to file there. In effect, they're going to be default judgments, because if that's a constitutional common law court and the California Supreme Court said so at the time, that's where we want to be. That's judicial power. And we have not only the right to invoke it, but even the duty to do that, especially as lawful de jure just sanguinis state citizens. We're the political power here. And if we go there and that court's recognized in the original Constitution, in my view, that then becomes good throughout the nation. That's full faith and credit. Article 4, Section 1. That's how we get them. And just a little bit about that 14th War Amendment, and that's another constant bugaboo. But when you realize a couple of things about it. Number one, its ratification, and I say quote unquote here, violated all 6 articles of the Constitution. I can't be the first one that's noticed that over the course of 150 years. And yet the the U.S. Supreme Court has never ruled on that issue. Isn't that strange? Never had they done it. And by the way, they did back in the day, case called Ex parte McArdle, 7 Wall 506, I believe. They ruled the Reconstruction Act of 1867 unconstitutional, but were not allowed to announce the opinion when Congress exercised the power it had to control the appellate jurisdiction of the court. Never came out. And with the Reconstruction Act gone, the 14th Amendment is gone, because if you don't know a quick history about that, is that the 13th Amendment with slavery was submitted to all of the states, after the war between the states, and recognizing the validity of the Reconstruction Plan of Lincoln and Andrew Johnson, the latter being the greatest president we've ever had. And if that's the case, fine. A year later, they do the same thing with the 14th Amendment, and all of the legislatures in the South, and that's where I'm from, rejected it in sufficient numbers to beat it today. Simple. That's the Reconstruction Act. They created this martial law state legislatures to ratify this amendment, which not only doesn't work, if the intent was to make everyone equal to state citizens, and that wasn't even close to what was going on there, you can't do that, or even worse, destroy the sovereign body politic, if that's what really happened. Then you violated Article 5. What does that say? You need conventions of people in the states to do that. Issues have never been before the court. And that's the only jurisdiction they have. All your voter registration forms, so they force you to declare under penalty of perjury you owe your citizenship to the 14th Amendment. That's a subordinate corporate body politic. The secret intent was to make citizens out of corporations. Case there is Southern Pacific Railroad versus Santa Clara County. I think it's 118 U.S. 352. And that came out, even the Supreme Court didn't get that until that case in about 1882, let alone the people that ratified the amendment. There's no ratification there whatsoever. And that's the problem we have. But if they start to recognize what they've just done here in this recent COVID case, it looks unrelated to everything we do, but the issues are the same. What we have to do is start making it explicit. Now, they didn't rule on anything like that, and they won't when they remand it back to the trial court and come back to them later. You're not going to see any of these issues unless people like me are successful in putting in a brief with amicus curiae to bring it to their attention, and or try to file a case there. And I'm going to take a brief pause here to let Adam explain exactly what happened to him when he's attempted to do that with the best petition I've ever seen. Go ahead.
Well, there's videos of us on YouTube. So you can search "You Win in Court." And if anyone else has any questions about that, but the very short is that the Supreme Court said, the clerk said that the court does not have Article 3 jurisdiction, that it's a legislative tribunal that hears only appellate cases from lower courts. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to add a different perspective. Is I feel sometimes in my experience that it's really easy to get caught up in the law and to blame the law as the seeming cause of the ignorance or denial that we're in of the truth. But it's not the law itself. It's not the 14th Amendment. It's not some statute or code. This is the collective consciousness, ignorance to the own truth of what we are. And it's rooted in a sense of separation, like Georgette was saying earlier, of us against them. And when we have that perception and operate within ourselves in that way, that is what gives rise to, there's a separate me here wanting to control these other people. And then we have a war of power. And that is exactly, essentially what we're talking about here. But that war, in my opinion, and in my experience, can never be won by forceful arms. And it just isn't going to happen that way, because it's just the battle of us against them, me against them, and it's just continuing. That's the real the perception of separation is the real crime, you might say. Georgette, can you put a different spin on that? Maybe share it in your words. I'm trying to get it out, and it doesn't.
No, I don't think so. I don't get that we're at a place to talk about this right now.
Okay.
If I may.
Okay.
Well, we've been giving the Constitution allows the checks and balances through the separation of powers. And when each agency of the government has the power to exercise those checks and balances. So when we're talking about the corruption of the courts, for example, the legislature has the power to impeach judges. The executive branch has the power to levy criminal charges against judges, and neither one are doing their job. Using the example of the 2020 election, when the executive branch is refusing to prosecute anybody other than those who are so-called insurrectionists at January 6th, they're not actually doing anything against the corrupt officials in government. And the legislative branch isn't doing much of anything about that either. So the judicial branch is, everybody's derelict in doing what they have been given the power by the people, by the states to do something about, and they aren't doing it. So it's when they aren't doing their job, and on the other side of that coin, they are going after us, being we the people, in the states, state citizens, national, people, however we want to call ourselves. They are going after us. So this is the perceived war that's going on, that since they don't do anything about themselves with the power that we've given them, then it truly is in the common law, and what Charles was talking about with regard to the constables doing things at the local level. Charles is not all for grand juries. He's more for the people's juries. We just form juries at the local level, but I'm all for doing the same with grand juries through the assemblies and things like this. It's we, the people, that actually have to pick up the mantle of the state. If the state's not putting the checks and balances on the national government, it's we, the people, that have the power constitutionally to stand up, and this comes from Chris Ann Hall. She's done a lot of talking about this type of thing, where we, the people, can pick up the mantle on behalf of the state and go after the federal government on behalf of the state. And we, the people, have the right in the common law to take things into our own hands per the Declaration of Independence, when the government itself is derelict and not doing what they're supposed to be doing to put checks and balances on one another. I yield.
How's that going
Charles?
for you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Who is that?
That's Ray.
Oh, okay, Ray. Go for it.
Well, I had comments for just about everybody. I think everybody's in one sense, everybody on this call is correct. Okay. Myself, I am motivated, and I will do this and keep doing it no matter what, but it is educating the people out there. I can ask one question to all of y'all. Y'all have court cases and everything else. I don't. I've gotten free of that. I'm sovereign. I'm we the people. I am a people, okay? I'm not a citizen. Don't call me that. I'll shoot you. I am we the people. Gotten rid of all that stuff, and I help other people get rid of all that crap and become sovereign. Now, if you, Georgette, in your case and everything else, if you had 12 people sitting on that jury that were sovereign, understood the law and everything else, how would you feel then?
I would say, I'm not
You should
sure.
feel pretty happy and pretty confident, because if they know the law and everything else, it's a slam dunk for you. And that's my case, education. Look at
Okay.
Adam and David, okay? They even said that. They went to classes, went this, that, and everything else, and taught one thing, okay? I know, matter of fact, Adam, I majored in law enforcement in college. So I know where you were at. People have got to know. If you don't start educating the people and everything else, I mean the little people out here, you're not going to have anything. Now, you talk about we the people. Well, that's these people out here. That's the ones that are ignorant and everything else. We have to do unignorant them. They got to be educated. Georgette, you said who we are. Adam said that too, or Dave said that, one of you. They have to know who they are. They have to know They have to understand the Declaration of Independence. That's the law. The Constitution, that's a trust for those officials and everything. They can't go outside that trust. They can't do the 14th Amendment, for crying out loud. They can't do any of this stuff. It's all unlawful. People have got to understand that. They have to know that. And when they do know that, then things change. But then the other side of that coin, there is some problems coming, and it's confronting us right now. This disease crap and everything else is so much bullshit. Excuse me, but that's the way I feel about it. It's just a pretense of what's coming. Now, and before the election of our sheriffs down here, I went and talked to the guy that was running for it, and I talked to our previous sheriff. And when I talked to the sheriff and I talked to him about, I don't know how many of y'all know about Rex 84 or cable splicer or garden plot or any of those things or what have you. But my sheriff confirmed all that stuff was real and everything else, okay? So we do have a problem. It's a big problem, and everybody should be prepared for it. And when I mean prepared, I'm not talking about just guns and knives and everything else. I'm talking about food, clothes, the whole 9 yards. Because it could be a long term when they're coming. And this virus thing's not working out for them so much. What I hate is I hate to see these groups of people, like in Virginia, what, a year, 2 years ago, when that gun laws and stuff, and everybody from Texas and everybody else came to their rescue. What bothers me, what scares me when somebody does that, is they're just looking for the right insurrection to call out Rex 84. That's all they're looking for. So you think about all the people that are unemployed to start with. That happened. Okay. Now then, you talk about this COVID stuff, and you look at all the people that either quit because they won't take the shot or get fired because they won't take the shot. Okay. Now you got more unemployed people. Pretty soon, if you're sitting there in your house and you can't make the payments, you can't buy food, you can't do anything, you're going to become desperate. And that's what they want. They want an insurrection. They have to have something that they can say in the newspapers and everything else. Oh, well, this group here or these people here or what have you, okay? Georgette, I believe everything you said. And Lord knows I'd rather be outside doing my garden and this, that, and what have you, okay, and being peaceful. But on the other hand, I do know about these bad guys. And these bad guys aren't judges. They're not cops. They're not all this stuff. They're way above all that stuff. And they're coming down because they want that one world order. Now, again, it's education. I can't help it. If we don't educate the people, if we don't try everything we could. You know, used to I'd tell people these things, okay? Just like we're talking now, but face to face. They throw their nose up at me and everything. Well, now I carry a book, and I got every document, every law, and everything else. They want to argue with it, I just flip to the right page, say, here, read it yourself. I'm sorry, I'll rest.
If I may, and I'll keep it short. I'm hearing two things. One, we need to educate. I think we all agree that. And the other is that we also need to be prepared for something that's happening right now. Georgette's got a case right now. I got a case in the Supreme Court right now. We've got things that are all going on right now. And so, I think we need to do both. We can't spend the next 25 years trying to make sure education comes first. You can't learn how to fight first before you actually walk down the street and maybe have a chance to, have to defend yourself. So, one can't come.
Adam, let me interrupt you on just that point right there. Let me tell you why education is so important, okay? I mean, really important, especially to all the people out here that have no clue what this is that we're talking about on the phone, all right? I don't care if they become sovereign or not. I wish they would. I wish they'd change all their status and stuff, and I got all the paperwork to do it for them. But what I want, my motivation is is they are educated so they know who the bad guy is. You see what I'm saying? Adam?
That was David that was talking before. So
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought
you interrupted David. So
sorry.
if you're looking for a response from Adam, I'll yield.
No,
That's okay.
no, go ahead, David. I'm sorry. I thought you left.
No, that was another Dave.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
No, anybody.
Well, I yield. I think my point was clear that we need to be both. And as far as self-defense, I am a teacher. I'm certified as a teacher. I don't teach in the public schools anymore, but I'm credentialed as a teacher. So education has always been important to me. I'm also a fighter. I've been in the martial arts for, since my 20s, 40 years now. And so I know that you have to be prepared for what's going on right now. And I also know that in order to get prepared, you have to have discipline and education. So you need to be prepared for the future, but you also need to be ready to take what you've got right now and apply it any best way you can. I yield.
Charles, did you have one thing left to say? And we're going on an hour and a half, guys, here. So did you want to conclude with something?
Adam, thank you. I do have a few comments I'd like to make, but I notice Mark has joined with us, and I don't think Mark has even introduced himself to the group. Would that be a good thing to do at this juncture?
Sure, if he'd like to.
Mark, are you there?
Donovan, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm not sure he's...
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I sure can, brother.
I didn't know that. I thought the host did muting and unmuting. Okay. I do have some info for you guys, and there's some different insights to what I have seen over my life and experiences, because I happen to live with the federal government and hundreds of their agents for 7 years of my life. So I watch them and see how they work and how they work as a they make the rules as they go. And they are what a legal entity that has gone rogue, in my opinion. But if you look back at what their track record and what they have done so far, they have they have covered their tracks pretty good. But if you really research, and I mean, if you research the hidden messages and the hidden stuff, like Bill researches the Constitution, you'll see that the Union Army of the United States back in the Civil War, that wasn't a civil war, that was a slaughter when they established the commercial government, and converted all the state citizens into the 14th Amendment slaves. And regardless of what you say and what your status is, from what I've learned, I've done all the status correction, I've done everything, I jumped through all the hoops, rang all the bells, and when the cops arrest me, or pull me over, they look up my information. There isn't anything for them to see that I'm not a U.S. citizen that belongs to the state, even though I've done all my correction. Okay, I've been surrounded by police. I've been in the system for 8 years of my life, nonviolent, victimless, no crime whatsoever, according to their rules and what they want to do. And I've seen thousands of men that were in prison for years and years that never even really committed a lawful crime, because the government or the rogue agents think they can do whatever they want, because we don't have boots on the ground. We're not organized. We have no structure. You can't get a team of 50 people to walk into the courtroom to support you based on the law of our nation. And when I hear all these people talking about all this stuff, and they're like, well, we can't win without a war or physical or whatever, that could be done, but it takes a large number of groups of people and cooperation and structure. It's not something that can be done by a few individuals, because you'll just disappear like all the other people. I mean, they got a movie called Benghazi or something like that, 13 Hours. Those were all the witnesses that knew what Obama and Hillary were doing. So what did they do? They just got rid of them. They dropped them into crossfire and said, okay, well, let's get rid of these people. We don't need them around. So, you have to have numbers, and like he said, educate the people. Who are the bad guys? Anybody that their narrative, so whether they got the white supremacy is a domestic terrorist because we're white. I mean, they're making up all kinds of stuff. So right now, from what I see, if you really want to do something and make this a better place, you gotta share and get people to realize what's going on. Like I said, the Union Army, people don't even realize what the Union Army was. And I mean, they even wrote a book called Gone to Texas. They made a movie called Outlaw Josie Wales. They showed you what the Union Army was all about in that movie. Okay, the person that wrote the book was an actual witness to what he saw when he was alive. So you can kind of get an idea if you just look at what happened to the Indians. And there's plenty of movies on that. The settlers weren't friendly with the Indians.
Donovan, sorry to interrupt you, bro. Again, we know that there's a long history of lies, deceit, all of that. So I just wanted to offer Charles an opportunity to conclude, because we've been going at this for over an hour and 40 minutes now.
And sorry I'm late, by the way.
That's okay, no problem. Charles, did you want to add something else?
Well, thank you, Adam. And I want to thank Donovan for his excellent contributions there. We agree on a lot. I'm curious what state you're in. There's more that can be said. I'd like to respond to both Ray's issue about education. Just briefly, I think apprenticeship in response to people that are willing to lead on the front line of the battlefield. Others can learn by doing, learn by being involved in the actual conflicts against the evil empire, rather than getting isolated and just opening books and studying. To my mind, that's a lot of retreating from the battlefield, and we need all hands on deck. And just briefly, and I would like to, as soon as possible, schedule another one of these, maybe even later today or something, because we've got an excellent group here, and I'm just getting started. But we can go ahead and take a break like Adam's suggesting, but the only other thing on my mind is the undercurrent from Georgette, and I think Adam, to at least some extent, I think in my private conversation with Adam, reference has been made to Gemstone University and Gabriel Cousins, and I'm thinking that maybe Georgette is involved with Adam in a little bit of commonality with that group, and they do a lot of good work. But my philosophical problem there is that a lot of it is intellectual and based in paperwork, and it's not directly confrontational against the people that are committing the crimes under color of public office. In my mind, we need to be taking a firm, manly stand, a courageous stand against the jackbooted Nazis that are trying to reduce us all to slaves. And a lot of the thoughts expressed, I think, and in Gemstone University and Adam and Georgette are rather a step removed, it seems to me, from that direct confrontation. Some of the wording about avoiding warfare. There's such a thing as warfare and defense. When you are attacked, when you are the victim, you have the right to punch back, to engage in the war, to try to stop the person that is sucking your blood from you without your permission. So I think it's important as a matter of philosophy. This gets to the law of trespass under common law, that people got the right to do whatever they want in the public. But the moment they put their toe over my property line, they need my permission, or else I've got the right to pull out a hammer and bang them on their toe, because they're not supposed to be on my property. They're engaged in an act of aggression. I got the right to peace on my property. So I just wanted to briefly illustrate that continuing point. I know we're out of time here. Maybe we can have, Adam, another conference real soon or something, so that we can carry on with these pressing issues that we as a very advanced group here should be trying to address as soon as possible. I yield.
Georgette, did you have anything else you wanted to share? Okay. I just want to leave it with this. I think it behooves us all to really, well, I'll just leave it at that. We'll just we'll just stay here. I have a lot of reflecting to do after this. This has been so eye-opening, and
Adam, can I ask you a question?
Yes, Ray.
On a call like this and everything else, and I was just thinking briefly on some of the stuff. If everybody tried to bring somebody in on a call that knows nothing about this to educate them, what kind of call would we have?
I don't think
Because
that's the issue,
most
Ray.
of this stuff is over their head.
Well, let me speak a little bit more frankly. When I say education, I don't necessarily mean studying laws and rules and codes. Relatively speaking, that's a part of it. But I feel that there's multiple layers, if you will, to reality, right? We have the what appears to be the physical level, and then what some may call the underlying or the spiritual level. And my feeling is that absolutely we have to take the physical reality that we experience ourselves in or perceive to be seriously, right? If we didn't feed ourselves, we would starve and die, right? If we didn't take care of ourselves, same thing. But there's also an underlying spiritual current that is driving everything. And if our focus is on one and not to the exclusion of the other, it's not going to work in the way that we think it is. And I really feel that I don't know how open everybody else is here to, well, I do know. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of openness to that underlying spiritual realm. And that I want to point more at Georgette, where Georgette was coming from with all that and where I'm coming from with that. And so I think enough has been said about that. But yeah, it doesn't even seem to be flowing through me, the words, because it just isn't probably right to talk about that here. So
no, that's not a problem at all. But you're still talking about educating them towards that view. Everything.
Yeah, go ahead, Georgette.
Ray, I think you certainly have a good question there. And I think, you know, if we would bring people on that didn't know anything about this or very little, it would be an educational Zoom. But, you know, that's different than I think what the group of us here are intending. But I think that's a great idea, you know, to have an educational Zoom and begin with very basic things. That's all.
If
The
I may,
reason I brought that up, Georgette, was for the fact that, okay, you're talking to an individual, all right? And maybe you get a light turned on, a little glimmer or something, okay? Well, now you need to bring them into a group or something so they know that you're not alone. It's not just the two of you. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, great idea. Yeah.
if I may, I was on a Zoom call recently, and I know that Zoom has the capability of having a large forum of people, and it also has the capability of breakout groups. I think in large organizations, they use the one of the two types of groups to really get into the nitty gritty of people who have, are associated at a certain level of understanding. And then, we could always just post something up for people to look at, and they will be educated just by listening to the conversation by osmosis, but taking a handheld approach in a larger group of people that could be getting more in the depth of enforcement and all this other kind of stuff. Bill and I understand Bill. I don't know him yet, but I can already understand that he's got 40 years worth, and I've got a considerable amount myself. And, I can meet him at a deeper level much faster and already have a background. I yield.
Okay. All right. Well, we will keep in touch with each other and see about scheduling the next meeting and go from there. Thank you all very much for all of your sharing your generous time and being here. And I'm so grateful to have met some of you and others of you to just continue to sharing time with you. So thank you for being here and for sharing. And I'll look forward to next time.
Thank you too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Blessings.
Bye.